Welcome to another episode of the True Brit podcast. I'm here with Kevin today. He's a guest at Dreamglade. He's been here all month. He's from Germany, and it's been such a pleasure having you and meeting you. And before we even dive into your stuff about Dreamglade and ayahuasca, I know you did a lot of work on yourself before you came here. And one of those things was Vipassana. I don't even know if I'm saying that right. Vipassana retreats. So maybe we could talk a little bit about just what that is and where you did it and what you got from it.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I had a great time here so far. And so Vipassana, it really started my journey of self-improving and personal development. And it was 5 years ago, and I did it while I was living in India. And Vipassana is you start off with a 10-day meditation course. That's like the introduction for starters.
Wow, that's really long.
And before that I had no experience with meditation, and so I talked to this woman in India, and she was like, what are you looking for? Are you looking for like a 2-day relaxed meditation retreat, or you want to really get into meditation? And so I did a little bit of research, and I was like, why not?
Wow.
Let's give it a try. And basically the rules there are you're doing Vipassana in noble silence. So there's no talking, no eye contact, no reading, no writing, no listening to music. That's like the basic rules, and the schedule is quite tough. The wake-up call is at 4 a.m.
Oh my God.
And then you start with 2 hours of meditation in the morning.
Do you have to like sit up or?
Yeah, you sit on a little cushion, cross-leg position, and at the beginning there were like the first 3 days, they were like a little bit more relaxed with it. If you like were stretching your legs or you were like getting up, as long as you're not disturbing someone.
Yeah.
But basically you sit there always for an hour, cross-leg position.
Wow.
You don't open your legs, you don't open your eyes, and you don't move your hands. So the position you sit in, that's the position you're gonna sit for an hour.
Wow. And before you did this, you had no meditation experience at all?
I did a little bit of guiding meditation on YouTube, but I had no regular meditation practice.
Wow.
So
this was a lot.
This was a lot, yeah.
Wow.
Wasn't used to sit in a position like this for an hour. And it's around 10 or 11 hours a day.
Oh my gosh.
Same meditation. So it's just basically 2 hours in the morning, then you have breakfast, then 3 hours, then you have lunch, then you have 4 hours, and then they only serve fruits and tea in the afternoon, and this is the last meal of the day. And then you have another 3 hours in the evening.
Wow.
And then they end the day with a lecture where they tell you stuff about the meditation practice, about the history, and about your tasks for the next day. And the interesting thing is there's not a teacher teaching. There's people observing, but the lecture, it's a video lecture. So all over the world, they teach the same thing because they just teach by this video lecture. So wherever you go, to whatever center, it's basically
you're getting
almost
the same thing.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. Wow. That's awesome. So I'm guessing you found it really, really difficult at first. Yeah. Was it difficult the whole time, or was there a point where it got easier?
It got easier. The first 3 days were pretty hard because I thought after living in India and having like a lot of the time I had very basic conversations. It was just like over and over again telling where I'm from, what I'm doing in India, and that's it. So I thought, 10 days of not speaking is pretty easy.
Right.
But it wasn't. Yeah, the first 3 days are pretty hard because I never felt that alone in my life before. Because there's no distraction. It's just you and your thoughts for like the whole day. Almost every night I cried before I went to bed because it was so overwhelming. And the first 3 days they just try to develop your focus in meditation. So your only focus point is your nose. So for 3 days, for 30 hours, you only observe the breath coming in and out through your nose.
Wow.
That's it.
Oh my God.
And it's so boring. And yeah, just sitting there for an hour and then you get a little break and then you go back in there. It was really tough. And what I heard before, most people, they leave after day 3.
Ah, okay.
Or they leave after day 7. This is like another hurdle. If you have like 7 days and you don't really get into the practice, you don't get anything out of it, then that's another like break point for some people.
Interesting. Yeah, 10 days sounds really long.
Yeah.
Do you think a lot of those people who left were like beginner meditators, or it just doesn't really matter? Like,
probably. I think when you've done a course of Vipassana before, then you really get the message and you really get what the meditation is about. And then I think if you've done 2 or 3 10 days, then you can go up and can do a 20 course. Whoa. Then you can do a 30 or 40 and a 50. So.
Oh my God. 50 days?
50 days, yeah.
Sheesh. I know, it sounds so nice, like, especially coming from our job where we're talking all the time. Like, I'm always kind of half joking, like, oh, a Vipassana retreat would be so nice to just go there and not talk to anyone. But in the back of my head, I know, like, that's not what it's going to be. It's not going to be just easy. Because you don't have, like you said, you don't have music. You don't have, like, my journal is so much for me.
Yeah.
It's like a big way to take my thoughts and put them on paper and then be kind of done with it. But if I don't have a journal or anything to distract myself, it's like, I can imagine that would be, like, I've never done that in my life. Not even one full day with no talking, no eye contact, no journaling, no music. So...
yeah.
Good for you. I mean, 10 days, people think ayahuasca retreat's brave, which it is, but I think that sounds really, really brave too, especially the fact that you stuck it out the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah, it was pretty tough. But, yeah, and, after the first 3 days, that's when you get into the Vipassana practice.
Okay.
And you can see it as a body scan. So, like, most meditations, they use like a mantra or some image or whatever. And this is just, you focus on your breath at the beginning and get into a natural breathing rhythm. So it's from focusing for like a couple of minutes and then you just go into the natural breath, observe the natural breath. And then you do a body scan from the top of your head down to your feet. And at the beginning, you have like 30 seconds to a minute where you just observe the top of your head and whatever sensation you feel, you acknowledge it, you don't judge it, and then you go to the next area. So, and the sensation can be whatever. It can be a tingling or the wind going through your hair or whatever it is. So you just wait, observe until a sensation comes up, and then you move on. And so at the beginning, it took me like 30, 40 minutes to go from top to bottom.
Wow, all the way down through your body.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in this hour, the most challenging thing starts about 30, 40 minutes in, when your legs start hurting. Because then your attention will always go back to your legs, even though you're just scanning another part of the body. And yeah, for the first 5 days, I couldn't sit for an hour.
Yeah.
I always had to like at least open my legs, stretch them a little bit. And I wasn't standing up, but just sitting there, just open my legs, relax them for a minute or two.
Yeah.
And then go back to the meditation. And one of the things they teach with Vipassana, one is they try to rewire your unconscious. Because most of the time we always react instantly to whatever comes up.
Right.
And they try to go back from reaction to observing. So you can actually like observe things as they come in and then make a decision, not based on judgment or feelings.
Wow. Because usually it's like we're constantly aversion to pain and going towards desire or pleasure or something.
Yeah.
And it's instant. So, and it's funny because of course that relates back to plant medicines and stuff. Trying to, if you're working with something like that, that's kind of the lesson we're going for too, is you don't have to just react or go off whatever you're feeling or whatever is coming up, just observe it.
Exactly, yeah.
So, okay, that's kind of what this whole thing is trying to get you to do. Have a pause between the sensation and your reaction.
Yeah.
Awesome.
This is one thing, and the other thing is everything is impermanent. And so that's what they talk about in the lectures in the evening. But it was just intellectual knowledge. Yeah, of course, everything is impermanent, things live and die and whatever. But for me, the crucial point was somewhere in the evening at day 5. That was the first time where I could sit for an hour.
Wow.
And then it just clicked because I stood up and the pain in my leg was gone. And then I was like, even the pain is impermanent. And it's not like a pain that, I don't know, I'm hurting myself permanently. It's just, it's there while I'm meditating and it's gone when I get up.
Wow.
And then it became like embodied knowledge. And then it got so much easier. And from day 7 on, I would sit every hour, wouldn't stand up. The pain was still there, but I wasn't viewing it as bad anymore. I wasn't viewing it as pain anymore.
Wow.
It was just a sensation.
Because you knew that when you stood up, it would be gone.
Yeah, I knew it's gone as soon as the meditation ends. So, and what was very interesting the last 3 days, the body scan took me 30 seconds instead of 30 minutes.
Wow.
So it was a constant flow of sensations through the body. Like you could feel your whole energy body and all sensations.
Wow.
And yeah.
Did you take that with you? Like, can you still have access to that? Or is it something that, do you have to practice it all the time still? Or is it just kind of there in you now?
If I haven't practiced for a while, it takes a couple of sessions, I think. But when I have like a daily practice, then it's
just there.
Yeah, it's just there.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Because I honestly can't sit cross-legged. I mean, I shouldn't say can't, but I don't like to sit cross-legged for more than like 20 minutes because one of my legs definitely falls asleep at some point. And in my mind, I'm like kind of, because what you just said just clicked something for me where I'm like, in my mind, I'm worried. I think the reason I move my leg is because I'm worried that this pain is going to be forever. You know, it's like a subconscious belief. I'm like, if I keep my leg here, it might go numb and then I'll have to like cut it off or something. I mean, that's not a conscious thought, but I think subconsciously that's what I'm thinking. So that's really cool. And is this a similar lesson that most people learn when they go through this whole retreat?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's the basic thing they want to teach you. Like the reaction thing and just realizing that whatever comes up in life and like you struggle with, just realize it's not permanent.
Right.
And that it's on you to do something if you're able to.
Awesome.
But it was really tough.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And I wouldn't recommend it without having meditation practice before.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, I was just heading in there and
Yep.
I had a basic idea what the rules are and
Mm-hmm.
what the environment would be like, but experience it there was way different and way
Yeah.
harder than I expected it to
Yes.
be.
Because I only have one experience that's kind of similar, but when me and my sister, I won't go into this too much, but me and my sister did this peyote retreat. I think I told you a little bit about this, because the rules in the teepee were you had to sit cross-legged or you could sit with your knees up. So it was just one or the other for the whole night, you know, for like, I don't know, 15 hours. And I just realized at that point how difficult it is, you know. That made me realize, like, oh yeah, Vipassana is not just like meditating all day. It's the physical aspects too that's a challenge for the mind. And it's crazy though, because even in that peyote retreat, in those teepee ceremonies, it's like you do hit some sort of breaking point where you just realize, like, this is fine, like I can just lean into this because there's no other way.
Yeah,
like you're not
right.
and since you're not a quitter, since you didn't leave, it's like, well, I'm doing this, so we got to figure out a way to make it work.
Yeah,
And then
right.
you do, and that breakthrough is really amazing, and I think something that has to be experienced, because like you said, we can talk about this, but unless you actually physically get it, like, that's the wisdom that you can carry. Otherwise you're just like, oh, I guess everything's impermanent and pain
Yeah.
is temporary. But when you have to go through it, you realize the truth of that. So
Yeah,
that's really
exactly.
awesome. I'm glad you said that you wouldn't recommend it for beginners, though, because I was going to ask you that.
Yeah, like, you can do it, but for me it took away the fun of meditation for like 3 months. I couldn't meditate for 3 months. It was just too much in those 10 days, probably because I didn't have a practice before. And it took me a while to get back into meditation.
That makes a lot of sense to me. I mean, you were meditating for hours and hours every day. That's it. So good for you for going through that. Have you done one since then, or was that the only time?
I haven't done a retreat.
Okay. Do you want to do another one?
I think now I could see myself doing another one.
Okay.
But the last couple of years I couldn't have.
No.
Like, and now I practice different kinds of meditation, whatever I feel is right. And sometimes, maybe once a week, I sit for an hour and do Vipassana. So I still do it, but I don't do it every day. I
Right.
do other meditations, whatever suits me, whatever suits my schedule. And
Okay. Awesome. So that was, you said, 5 years ago?
yeah.
And then the first time you came to Dreamglade was like a year ago?
Yeah, last
Okay.
year in September.
Okay. So what happened in between then and now that made you want to come try ayahuasca? Or actually, okay, I changed my question. Because first I want to know what you got from the retreat. Was it mainly those two messages that we talked about, the impermanence and the kind of pausing before you react? Or did you notice any other side effects? Anything that lingered on after the retreat?
Yeah, I think I got much more out of it than just the two of those, because I had so much time to think about stuff because I was just on myself, right? Yeah, and I was contemplating relationships, how I show up in the world, how I treat other people, how I treat other beings. And so this was a big change, like more compassion for other people, and the values for me in life, what's important for me in life. And yeah, after I came back from India, I went into a totally different line of work compared to what I did before. I was working in sales before, and I studied marketing and sales management, and then I ended up in hospitality. And at the time, I remember, like, my family were saying, oh, how long are you going to do this and start doing something
Like,
real?
quote unquote real, yeah.
Yeah. And at the beginning, I also saw it as a temporary thing, but I think it was mostly because of the outside pressure. And then I reached a point where it didn't matter to me anymore, because I wanted to do what I like doing, and I like doing this job. And so I did it. It paid the bills, and I and I had fun. I had nice colleagues, and yeah.
Awesome.
And then instead of doing it for a couple of months, I did it for 4 years.
Wow.
So
And did your family keep asking you like questions, or did
they
they eventually?
stopped after a while because they saw that I'm happy and they don't have to worry about me and making enough money and can sustain my own living, and yeah.
Awesome.
So.
Okay, cool. So that sounds like that retreat really did help your life in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
Oh, maybe I have to do it. I do really want to do it, but before I do it, I'm going to get much more disciplined in my meditation practice. I want to be able to sit cross-legged for an hour before I go into this retreat, you know. But anyway, okay, so yeah, then you had, 4 years between then and when you came to Dreamglade. So what made you want to come here?
I think it started during COVID, where everything shut down. It was just a very difficult situation, and I wasn't really sure anymore if I'm happy with what I'm doing, and certain things didn't make sense anymore, and I got depressed. I smoked weed for many years, but I think during this time it just got overhand. Smoked every day, all day. The only time I didn't smoke was when I got to work. So, but before and after, first and last thing of the day was smoking a joint. And yeah, I got to a point where I was just very unhappy, depressed, and I felt stuck because I had all those tools, all those meditations, different breathwork practices, and it seemed like nothing would help anymore. I just reached a point where those things, those tools only could do so much. And I heard about ayahuasca maybe 7 years ago. And there was a time where I just did some research on different psychedelics, because I haven't taken any psychedelic before. And this was a time where I just wanted to gather some information just in case I get an opportunity to take some mushrooms or take some LSD. And I wanted to know what it's about, what to expect, what to take care of. And then I also stumbled over ayahuasca. And at the time, it was like, oh, this doesn't sound fun. So I just shoved it aside and I was like, okay, probably not going to do it. And yeah, then at the beginning of last year, it randomly popped up on YouTube as like a recommended video.
Interesting.
I think it was the same documentary I watched 7 years ago.
Wow.
And yeah, I watched it again and did months of research. And I was like, yeah, I think I'm ready for this, as ready as you can be.
Yeah.
And I thought this might help me. And then I had 2 of the same dreams.
Whoa.
The same exact dream, and now when I think about it, it was definitely related to ayahuasca.
What was it? Do you mind sharing?
Yeah, sure. So the first one was, I think, a couple of weeks after I watched the documentary again, beginning of last year. And the dream was, I was sitting on an open field around a bonfire, and around me there were 3 entities. There was one being that looked like, I don't know, made of stones, like a golem. Another one looked just like flames. And another one was, I think, a horse with wings.
Whoa.
And in the background there was a forest, and then this woman came out of the forest, and I couldn't see her face. It was just all flowers and leaves. And then she went to those 3 entities, and they dissolved and disappeared.
Wow.
And it was just me left sitting there. And then she was like, follow me into the forest. And that's where the dream ended.
Oh, wow. That is really cool.
Yeah. And yeah, so, but last year, I think I quit my job in May or June, and I wanted to go back to India. So I had 3 months planned in India. So I was like, yeah, I'm gonna do ayahuasca, but I'm doing it the next year, because this year I already planned my trip to India, or kind of like planned it. And I think a day before my flight, I had the exact same dream again.
Wow.
I was like, okay, that's weird, but yeah, gotta go to India. It's already settled, right?
Right, it's booked.
Yeah. And so I went to India, and the second day I met a guy in a hostel, and we had a conversation about meditation, and he was really interested in Vipassana. So I told him about my experience, and then he was like, wow, that sounds pretty intense. And the next thing he says is, you know, before I came to India, I was in Peru, and I also did a very intense thing.
Wow.
And he did ayahuasca.
Oh
He didn't do it here in Dreamglade, but he went to another center. And then we talked about his ayahuasca experience. And then I was like, yeah, what do I really have to do in India? Because I had planned the first 3 weeks where I wanted to visit some people from my last stay in India. And then I had a 2-week yoga and meditation retreat planned. So the first 5 weeks were like already planned. And after 2 weeks, I don't want to offend any Indians, but it felt kind of boring because it wasn't traveling anymore, it wasn't adventure anymore, because everything was so familiar. All of my Hindi came back, and so I was getting along too well for traveling around in India. And then before I went into the ashram for my yoga retreat, I reached out to Paul from Dreamglade, and I booked my retreat.
Wow.
For this year, or for
Wow.
like, yeah,
So
last year.
Did you go from India to here?
No, after my yoga retreat, I went back to Germany for 3 weeks, packed my bag and everything for Peru, and then I
Wow.
went to Peru.
Wow. You're like, I can't ignore the calls.
Yeah, it was just too much.
Because I always say I get things in threes, you know, but it sounds like you did too. You got 2 dreams. I mean, you got more than 3 though, because you got a couple dreams, you got a YouTube video, you got someone in India. You're probably like, oh my God, I came all the way to India to hear about ayahuasca.
Yeah, right.
Oh, gotta go now. So you had never done any psychedelics.
No.
So what was the first time you were here, you spent 4 ceremonies here?
6 ceremonies.
6 ceremonies, okay.
2 weeks.
So
Yeah.
how did that go for you?
I thought, because I haven't done any psychedelics, that I have like low expectations, because I have nothing to compare it to, right?
Exactly.
And after my first ceremony, where I didn't get much, I realized I had huge expectations.
Yep, she
I
does
had
that.
this idea in mind what 10 out of 10 ayahuasca experience should look like, and I didn't get it. And I also was just closed up emotionally. And then after the first ceremony, I had a talk with Stacy, the previous owner, and she talked about this writing exercise, and it seemed so simple, and I thought, oh, this probably doesn't do anything, right?
Right.
And it's basically, you just take 10-15 minutes and you write down a random event of the past with as much details as you can remember, and just bring up the emotions you felt during this event without judging them. And after one day, I did the writing exercise, and I was crying.
Hmm.
And I haven't been crying in years.
Wow.
So, and yeah, this just opened me up enough for my second ceremony. And yeah, my second ceremony was 1,000 out of 10.
Really?
It was unimaginable. Of
Yeah.
course it is. Right? Because whatever you think you heard about it or other people tell, it's their experience.
Exactly.
And every experience is so unique. And yeah, but I had to go through a first ceremony with like getting nothing or like not getting much and just opening up and letting down my walls. And yeah.
And putting yourself out there too, and like showing that you're in this, because I think I always say you get out what you put in. So just even you just doing the writing exercise, even if you think like, oh, this sounds like silly, stupid, and little nothing, and then you do it, like ayahuasca is watching, and all this, life is watching, and if you're trying, it's going to reward you for that. So that's awesome. I mean, that's a huge testament to the writing exercise, is that you didn't cry for years and then you did. I mean, that's really awesome.
And then I cried every day.
Yeah.
While I was here.
Yep.
While I was writing, while I was not writing. It was just...
It was coming out.
Yeah, years and years of repressed emotions coming up.
Wow. That's so beautiful. I didn't realize until we were just talking about this that we had pretty similar, I mean, so far just with our first two ceremonies, but we had pretty similar first two ceremonies. Because mine, I haven't talked about them yet, but my first ceremony didn't get much, putting that in quotes, but I remember being like, same as you, I thought I didn't have any expectations. I didn't really want to even do this, but obviously I do, have huge expectations because this is not what I expected. And then the second night, oh my God, it was just like everything I could have imagined and more. So I'm curious where this is going. How are the rest of your ceremony? I mean, first of all, even without the ceremonies, like the fact that you just came here, wrote, and got your tears to come up is amazing. Like, because I see a lot of people come through here, especially men, who have a really hard time crying. And they're always asking, like, or they're saying, like, I just want to cry, but I don't know how. So you just gave a really good way of how to do this. Just write about something that happened, try to bring up those feelings, and burn the paper.
Yeah,
and,
right.
And then even just doing that, like you said, for you it was once, that's really awesome. Sometimes people, it takes a while, but once it's there, and then like the floodgates have opened and the tears are just coming. And for me, like, I mean, you've probably seen me, I cry all the time, but it's so funny because in our society people think that it could be like a bad thing, like, oh no, why are you crying all the time and there must be something wrong. But for me it feels like the healthiest option, because if you're not, you're just holding that all inside and you're waiting for one day to be able to just release all this pain, instead of let's just release it as we feel it,
Yeah, exactly.
when we're in a safe container, a good place. So when I see people crying here all the time, or even outside of here, it's just like, I love it, because they're just they're feeling. That's what you got to do. So that's really awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I feel like this is a retreat, or especially here at Dreamglade, it's the perfect container to let everything out without judgment. And it was such a good practice for me. And I wasn't just sitting in my room and doing the writing exercise and crying alone. I was crying everywhere. I was crying in a share circle, and I was crying while I was talking to other people. But I knew I can do it because, like, there's no judgment, everything is allowed here, and it was such a big permission to just let it all out. And I carried this on, into my regular life, and was crying a lot when I got back home, and not just alone, but also I was talking to friends or to family members, and
wow, that's
big
beautiful.
thing, yeah.
Because then they see you doing great, and it also gives them a permission slip to do that as well.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful. Was your family kind of on board before you came, or did they know about this?
I told them what I'm going to do, but they had no concept of it. So my mom and my dad, they never had any experience with any psychedelics, with any drugs, so they didn't really get the concept. So, but they knew what I was doing, because I wanted to be open about it, especially when I get back home and I'm having a hard time. And so I wanted them to know what I did in Peru so they can relate and not get like totally freaked out.
Exactly. That makes sense. That's really cool. Okay, so that was only ceremonies 2 out of 6, and I don't know if you even remember all of the rest of them, but...
Yeah, I do.
You do? Damn. Good for you. I think I forget most of the stuff. I just write about it. And I'm like, oh yeah, but... Okay, so how was the rest of your first stay here? Like, give us your main... The big lessons, the big aha moments, or just your big takeaways that you want to share.
Yeah, I think one reason I came here was just for spiritual reasons. So I think I had so many questions, and I think they got answered in a way of, I think that's a common theme, like everything is connected, and but really feeling it in ceremony, it's like sitting an hour in Vipassana. It's like just it gets embodied, and you have and you totally get it. One big takeaway for me was one of my thought patterns I had almost my entire life, and it was, I thought whatever I think about myself and however I feel about myself, everyone else feels too. So whenever I was disappointed about myself because I didn't achieve anything at school or in sports or whatever, I thought all my friends are disappointed and my family is disappointed. And yeah, this was just eating me up. And I thought, this is how the world works. So if I'm feeling that way, everyone else is feeling the same about me. And then I realized first, when I think about myself, someone else is thinking about them. Everybody's going through their own shit. It's not like the world doesn't turn just around me. It's like I'm not the focus of everything. And
beautiful.
Yeah, and I don't have to project anything outwards. It's not that people don't care, but it's not just because I'm disappointed doesn't mean everyone else is.
Yeah, I have a couple things to say on this one because this is so big and awesome that you got this. But one, I was talking, I think it was a guest here who told me this, but he was like, I realized, I can't remember where I heard this, but the person realized, like, when you take a group photo and everybody looks at the photo afterwards, like, who are they looking at? It's just themselves, right?
Yeah.
We're all just looking at the picture, looking at ourselves and saying whether you like it or not because of how you look. I mean, my sister joke about this all the time because she's like, oh, I never look at you in the photo. just want to make sure I look good. Like, we all do that.
Yeah.
And it's just a good metaphor for life because, no one's even really paying attention or cares that much. If you fuck up, not a huge deal to anybody else. Maybe it's a big deal to you, especially if you think other people are judging you or disappointed, but they're probably not. Like you said, they're dealing with their own stuff. That is such a weight lifted, too, when you realize, like, not everyone's world revolves around you. If you fuck something up, it's okay. Like, they're not gonna hate you or fall apart. That's I love that. That's awesome.
Yeah, and I think the confirmation then was, I had a talk with my mom afterwards, after I came back, and I told her about this. And the first question she asked was, what did we do wrong?
Oh, wow.
So she thought it's her fault. But that was another one I realized last year, that it's nobody's fault. Because if I would blame my parents or my teachers for anything I had to go through in life or whatever, and I think they fucked me up, I also had to blame their parents and their teachers and their grandparents and their teachers. And at the end, I have to blame the first person ever lived on Earth. Right? Or it's nobody's fault and I'm not blaming anyone.
Yeah.
And it's a very easy choice.
Yeah. for you.
Yeah, for me it
That's
was, definitely.
And to hear her say that must have been interesting too, because it's like maybe you got that internal belief passed on to you. Like you said, maybe you internalized that belief of like, oh no, like, am I doing okay? Am I doing things right? Am I going to fuck something up? Like maybe she accidentally, I mean, because our parents passed down, all of our parents passed down some of their stuff. And so maybe that was just a little kind of wink and a nod from the universe, like, hey, this isn't your fault. And maybe you got it passed down from your mom, and it probably wasn't her fault either, but you're the one who stops the cycle.
Yeah, right. And I think everyone's they're doing their best all the time to the capacity they have.
Yeah.
So, and the second thing my mom said was, no, we were never disappointed about you because we love you for who you are and not for what you do in life.
Oh.
Yeah, and we ended up crying, and it was such a beautiful moment, and this took all the weight off my shoulders.
That is so beautiful. Sounds like you have a wonderful mom.
Yeah, I have.
That's awesome. Oh, we're so hard on ourselves compared to how we are on other people. It's so crazy. It's another one I see all the time. Everyone's so hard on themselves. Yeah. But really, everyone's just paying attention to themselves.
Right.
And like you were saying too, I mean, we can't, even if we tried, because I used to do this, like even if we tried to control other people's perceptions of us, we can't. Because it's their own perception. Right. It has nothing to do with us. So that's just a totally crazy battle that I was involved in too. Was just like trying really hard to control everyone's perception of me, saying all the right things at the right times, making sure no one's upset or disappointed. No one thinks I'm a bitch, or everyone thinks I'm great, and it's just so much effort. And at the end of the day, totally out of your control. Yeah. They're going to think what they want to think anyway. So It's a beautiful lesson.
Yeah. Yeah, and similar to you, I think I was always holding myself to the highest standards. I would never hold anyone to those standards.
They're crazy standards.
Yeah,
totally. The standard is perfect, you know? That's the standard we want to get to. It's like, we're trying to be perfect.
Yeah. So another lesson was don't be so hard on myself all the time and give myself some grace, and and even during the integration process, and I think that's pretty normal. I hear this from a lot of people, and I knew this before, but I had to experience this for myself, that I was falling back into old patterns. But now I was aware of it, being back, and then I was able to do something about it. And at the beginning, I was really hard on myself every time I didn't do the work. Oh, today I didn't meditate, or I didn't journal, or I didn't do yoga, or whatever. And also I had this idea that integration, it's a process that ends at one point. It was like, okay, I do this for a couple of months and then I'm done. And then I understand every lesson and I move on, right? And then I realized, no, it's a lifelong process. Not just integrating what I learned in my ayahuasca retreat, but for me, it's about integrating every day into the next day. What are the lessons I learned today? How did I show up today? And how do I want to show up tomorrow? So it's like a constant process, and it never ends.
Never ends.
So of course there will be a point where I understand all of the messages from one ayahuasca ceremony. But like, how do I implement this in my life? And every day is different. Every day changes. So also this integration process of from day to day changes. So yeah, that was a big one.
That's awesome. It reminds me of, I think this might be a Joe Dispenza meditation thing that he does, but I think it's him who at the end of the day he says like, where did I fall from grace? But when you were talking, I was like, maybe there's another good question we could ask ourselves at the end of the day, which is, where could I give myself more grace? Because if we're I don't think our problem is being too hard, like, or being so soft on ourselves is the opposite thing, right? It's like, oh, I fucked up. I didn't do meditation. I'm not doing integration right. It's like, that's not the point. You know, we're living and we're learning every day. So maybe we could ask ourselves, like, where can I give myself more grace? That would be nice. That would be really nice, you know? That's awesome. So a year ago, you went back and kind of like you started to learn how to integrate the lessons and started to learn that it was going to be a lifelong journey and not just have a finish line.
Yeah.
So then what made you want to come back?
One thing was I just felt there's still so much more shit inside I want to address. And the other one was I was just very intrigued by the holistic healing approach, the curanderos practice here, and it's so different from the medicine I know is practiced in Germany, for example. It's like everything's separate. The body is separate from the mind, and there's no energy and whatever. But here it's like it's all connected, and it makes so much sense because a lot of traditions, even though it's in India or in China or in Africa, they all have the same concept of mind, body, emotion, spirit. It's all connected. And yeah, another thing what the writing exercise does, for example, it's like if you have physical pain, 90% it's caused by emotional or psychological trauma. So the pain is not the cause, it's just a symptom. And so I was like very intrigued by how they work here and the variety of plants they use, and it's like so natural and so connected with nature, and so I wanted to learn more about it. And so I decided I come here for a month to work on my own stuff and also learn more about the medicine, and yeah.
Awesome. Cool. So what have you, I mean, I know we haven't quite ended the month and you haven't had a lot of time to process it, so it's okay if you don't have a great answer to this question, but what are some of the things that you've gotten from this month? Or how are you, feeling versus how you were feeling before?
I feel much lighter because I got rid of some shit. There was a lot of stuff inside, a lot of pain I was carrying around and stuffing in there.
Yeah, and Kevin does a lot of purging, by the way.
Oh yeah.
Purge king.
Yeah.
But it's great. We'd love to see it because as we say sometimes, it's not getting sick, you're getting better.
Yeah.
It's stuff coming out that you don't want in there.
And it's not that bad.
No.
Like the purging part is not that bad.
Everyone's the most worried about that usually.
Yeah.
I know I was like, you're telling me we're going to vomit and shit.
Yeah.
Like, that's not even something you need to worry about,
Yeah.
Most people really like it.
Yeah, it's pretty easy because you haven't eaten, you eat very clean, you get toxins out, and it's just like, yeah, it's very easy.
Yeah.
Another thing that came up for me, I had a very interesting fear. And the fear was, I was afraid of getting better. Because that was my identity for so long. Being like depressed, and I have to constantly work on myself. And what do I do if I feel better now? Who am I without this pain, without this suffering, right? So that was a big one.
And it's funny because I had Dave, talk with me too, and he had a very similar message come up at one point where it's like, do I even want to heal? Am I afraid of healing? That seems so counterintuitive, but it also makes sense because it's your identity. And again, it's the unknown. Who are you without it? Do you feel like you kind of crossed that hurdle once you realized you had that fear?
Yeah, definitely.
I think you did too. I definitely think you did too. Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, I think a lot of stuff came up. Pain from my childhood, where I felt like I'm not enough. I couldn't be myself. Was always hiding, like internally, and just felt like people wouldn't see me, and I couldn't show up for who I am. I just couldn't be myself, and so at a ceremony where all of this stuff came up, and yeah, like I'm still processing, of course. We're like
Yes.
close to the end, but
Close to the end.
yeah, 11 ceremonies so far.
This time.
So yeah, a lot of stuff to process, and yeah, it will take a while, and it's fine. And I'm looking forward to it. Yeah.
That's awesome. It's so cool that we have people from all over the world, and like you're coming here from Germany, and yeah, most of us, I mean, US or wherever we come from all these places where we look at medicine totally differently. I heard this doctor talk about it on Instagram or something, but she was like, you know, the Western approach is kind of like giving someone Tylenol for a piece of glass in their foot. Instead of like looking at a piece of glass and being like, maybe we should figure out how to take that out, you know. It's just like, well, there's pain, we'll just give you some pain reliever pills.
Right.
So yeah, that's also what drew me. I mean, one big thing that drew me here too, I think similar reasons as you. It's like the holistic approach for sure seems right to me, but it's also like all of the spiritual stuff was just so fascinating to me.
Yeah.
But there's one thing that Drew always says that I like. I don't know if you've heard him say this, but he's like, a lot of people come here to be more spiritual or something. But really, we're all spiritual people. Like, we're all actually just spirits covered by layers of crap. So he's like, what you're doing here isn't becoming more spiritual. It's just removing the layers of crap that you had so that your spirit can basically shine and just be the fullest version of you. But I like that vision because it's like, you don't need to become anything. You just need to unlearn some stuff. You need to just remove some shit.
Yeah. Right.
But it's always there. You know, the spiritual side of everyone is in there, whether they know it or not. But some of us has been so covered or sheltered or whatever. But it's there.
Yeah.
It never went away. So yeah, I mean, you look fucking great. You're like glowing a month here.
Yeah.
I know we're not taking a video, but you know, if they could see you, they'd see you're glowing too. Your eyes are so bright and shiny. So obviously, I mean, when I first started this too, I had all these, I mean, I still have a lot of doubts in my head, and I don't like identify with them, but I'll just notice them when they come in, and I'm like, oh, that's still there. And I like that there. But there was this one that I've kind of gotten over at this point because I'm so deep into this now. But at the beginning, I was like, maybe this is just, you know, people calling it medicine. It feels a little bit cheesy. It's kind of just drugs, you know. And I remember in the truck on the way here my first time, I was talking to Stace, and he's like, kept correcting me. I'd say drug, and he'd say medicine. And I'd roll my eyes like, okay, whatever, you know, these stupid hippies. And then now I'm like, oh my God, it's so funny how backwards I had it. Because all these things I was taking as medicine is ridiculous. Like I was taking Vyvanse and all this other crap that it's essentially toxic chemicals I was putting into my body, calling it medicine. And this is like such ridiculously amazing medicine where it works on all levels. It's like helping you physically, it's helping you emotionally, it's helping you spiritually, it's helping you mentally. I mean, La Medicina. It's like the medicine. Yeah. And again, I think ayahuasca is freaking amazing. I think there's a lot of other things out there that are also really amazing that work on all these levels, like your Vipassana retreat. But there's some stuff that, you know, ayahuasca is just magical with and can do all that. And it's fascinating. But the spiritual stuff is one reason I came back, because I was just like, oh my God, everything I thought was fake and bullshit might actually be real. Oh no.
Yeah, and I think everybody needs to find their own practice and their own tool. And if you're gonna continue work with Vipassana and only do this, you're gonna benefit from it year by year, retreat after retreat. And if that's your thing, that's your thing. But if you resonate more with ayahuasca, or you go to the Andes and drink Bachuma, or other plant medicines, or you have another breathwork practice that's helping you, it's all good. Do whatever does you good, right?
Exactly.
It's your medicine, and yeah.
Totally. That's something I keep thinking about too is, to be on a podcast and I keep talking about ayahuasca, but I'm like, it's not that I think everyone has to do or should do ayahuasca. It's exactly like what you said. We just have to, I do think there's a lot of lessons we get from ayahuasca that we can share, which is awesome. But I definitely think it's more about like life is the day to day. Like life is what's happening all the time.
Yeah.
And we're just missing it. And there's so many tools you could have to have a better life, a better way of living. So all the stuff you mentioned is awesome. And even music to me is medicine. Like
Yeah,
I just,
totally.
it's so, like, what even is it? It's just magical to just put on a certain song and have it make you feel a certain way or want to dance or want to cry or, yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Is there anything else you want to share about, your yoga or your practices or your ayahuasca experience or where you're heading next, or you think you want to call it?
Yeah, before I came here this year, I wasn't really sure what I'm going to do next. So I quit my job and came here with like open-end idea of maybe I do some traveling or I go back to Germany afterwards or whatever. But now it's become pretty clear that I'm going to stay in Peru for a while. And yeah, let's see how that goes.
Awesome.
But I'm really happy to find a direction, and yeah, I'm excited for the next part of my journey.
Good for you. I'm so excited for you too. I feel like it's very clear that you're meant to be here right now. You're on the path that's, meant for your higher self or whatever. And yeah, I'm really excited for you, and we'll have to keep in touch.
Definitely, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we stopped recording, but then Kevin and I kept talking, and it's really good. So I want to record this. So we were talking about how, like, I was just telling him how it's funny how he went from, like, no meditating to, like, Vipassana retreat. And then he went from, like, 0 psychedelics to ayahuasca. It's like going from, like, not running to running a marathon. And we were talking, I was saying how I used to, like, think that was a bad idea, but now I realize, like, it's okay if you've never had psychedelic experience, especially if you have some sort of practices in your tool belt, like just meditation, breathing, anything that can help you be present, stay focused on what's coming up without like totally getting overwhelmed by everything, just knowing how to find your center. And even something simple like having a breathwork practice or having a meditation practice before you come here, super helpful. And then and yeah, Kevin was saying that helped him too, but now he was about to say, like, people ask me, so go on and tell us what people ask you and then tell us what you say.
Yeah, so I was just talking about how all the tools I developed since my Vipassana retreats, how they helped me during my ayahuasca experiences. And even though I didn't have any experience with other psychedelics, but I think I had enough tools to handle whatever is coming up. And yeah, afterwards people ask me what experience was more intense. Was it Vipassana or ayahuasca? And it's hard to tell now, because without Vipassana, ayahuasca would have been so much more intense. If I would have done ayahuasca 5 years ago,
right,
and then now Vipassana would have been much easier probably for me, because I had like all the tools I learned from ayahuasca.
That's a good point. So it's kind of impossible to say, like...
Yeah, like the only... the next level would be doing ayahuasca with the rules of Vipassana. Like, I couldn't imagine doing ayahuasca and not being able to talk and share and journal, because there's so much more stuff coming up and I need to talk about it or journal about it and contemplate about it to make sense of it and to really extract all the information and implement it into my life.
Right.
So this would be like the next level shit.
Yeah. Oh my God.
So...
Have you thought about doing it? Because I've thought about, like, people have really intense dietas in the jungle where they do dietas, no talking, no person-to-person interaction, and then you do ayahuasca.
Yeah, I think now...
Sorry.
Yeah, I think at at one point or another I will end up doing a dieta in isolation, and I think now I'm prepared for it, as prepared as you can be. Um, yeah, and another thing I want to do in the future is a darkness retreat.
Yeah, I would love to do that.
So yeah, I wanted to do it last year, but I couldn't find a place to do it, and I thought it's probably a bit too much. A couple of months before coming here for a month,
Maybe.
so yeah, but that's something I want to do in the future.
Yeah,
Be
me
in the
too.
darkness for 5, 6, 7 days. I don't know, and
Oh, me too.
yeah.
That sounds wild. Because I did have this crazy fear of the dark before I came to work here, even. I mean, it got better over the years, but even living here, I was like, I couldn't sleep in my own private tambo at the beginning. I had to sleep in the Maloka. And then now I feel like I'm finally not afraid of the dark. I mean, it took a while. It took like, a couple years of living in the jungle, but I'm like, oh, I'm not afraid of the dark anymore. I used to like be in the bathroom. I think about this now because I go to the bathroom even without my flashlight sometimes. Like I go in with my flashlight, but then turn it off when I'm peeing or something, and it's so dark, and I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
But in the past, I would have been like freaking out, like, oh my God, where's the light? I need the light.
Same, yeah.
You were the same?
Yeah.
It's so funny. So many people are afraid of the dark and like ashamed to say it. But I'm like, it's because I mean, a lot of reasons, but one is because we're so disconnected from nature and ourselves. We're constantly distracted, and we use our eyes as like input to give us a sense of control and a sense of like what's real, what's going on. So if you take that away, you're just kind of surrendering to whatever.
Yeah, and for me, it's a metaphor. Like being afraid of the darkness is being afraid of the unknown.
Yes.
Because I can't control it.
Exactly.
I don't see what's coming literally, right?
Right.
But I think being in the darkness for a couple of days really develops and enhances your other senses, and not just the five senses, but also your intuition, your feeling, what is happening around you in the room without seeing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
That would be so interesting. I wonder if they have a place in Peru. Maybe not. But yeah, about the other psychedelics, what you were saying about when we weren't recording about like some of the stuff ayahuasca was teaching you. It reminded me of some of the stuff like mushrooms have taught me and stuff, where you feel like you're seeing everything with fresh eyes and you're seeing everything new, which is, again, I think something the darkness retreat I've heard teaches you, because when you come out, you're like, everything's new. You feel the wind on your face. Like, you're just so present with all of the magic that's around you that you used to take for granted.
yeah.
And I think, like you said, there's a lot of ways to get there. Darkness sounds like one of them too. But of course, psychedelics. I remember mushrooms. I felt like a child. Everything's new and fun. And after that Bufo trip I told you about, where it's like I came back and my body felt so crazy. I'm like, I can't believe I have this like body with these hands. Like hands are so amazing. They can do so much, and you just start really appreciating like this vessel, and like your body's a vessel, and this life, like everything that's here is pretty fucking amazing.
Yeah. And I think what intrigues me about a darkness retreat is that it's such an ancient practice, because all over the world, when you look at the pyramids in Egypt, or temples in India, or pyramids and temples here in South and Central America, they all had built-in dark chambers where the high priests would go in and sit there for a couple of days and learn from the darkness. Or there were some civilizations that they raised certain children in the darkness. So the child was born, and then it was raised until it was 9, 10, 11 years old in a cave with like no light. They were just bringing food and educating and letting also the darkness teach. And those children, they would become their highest priests, because they had such an incredible knowledge about astronomy and about the history and the spirit world, and
Whoa.
because they had no distractions while learning all this stuff, and they were so connected with themselves.
Damn, I didn't know that. That's so cool. Because it reminds me of, I mean, it's just like if you take away one of your senses, the rest of yours get stronger, right? So it's like forcing almost blindness on you, but then being able to take it away. That's really cool. I didn't know that. Because, yeah, I mean, I think about our school systems and how everything works, and it's so, I mean, it's pretty fucked up, but it's also just like, well, what would we have done if kids, like, I was just watching this TV show about, like, old times. It's called Outlander, but I was thinking, like, oh my God, these people who are ruling households and, like, doing all this, like, making really massive decisions about, like, war or their house or whatever, they're in their 20s probably, or even younger, and my first thought was like, damn, that's so much responsibility at such a young age. Like, how did they do it? But then my second thought was, well, of course, they probably learned so quickly from just being outside and, like, not being stuck in schools and chairs. Like, they're probably learning so quickly all the time. And, by the time they're 20, they just knew way more than I do now at 32,
right.
you know? Yeah. It's crazy how much we learn all this academic stuff, but we don't learn anything else.
Yeah.
So, yeah, there's so much wisdom that's just there that I think it's also cool with plant medicines and darkness retreats. So you could just tap into it. You're like, oh, it's right here. We just need to silence and still the rest of us to access it.
Yeah, and find our way back. It's like the knowledge. It's always been there. We're just forgotten how to access it, and we just think whatever we learn in school, that's the only thing we need. But basically, it's not really preparing you for life.
Right.
And I think that's one of the reasons psychedelics and plant medicines become so much popular the last couple of years. Is like going back to this old wisdom and gaining knowledge that's not been forgotten, but just like buried. And I think we slowly dig it up, and
Yes. Yeah. And I feel like now we're in the process of, like, that digging up is becoming so fast because all these people everyone wants to know, everyone just wants to have the information and the knowledge. And we're starting to realize that, like, we haven't been told a lot of stuff. A lot of stuff's been, like you said, buried or kept hidden. And that includes our own personal power and our own, like, every human has a special gift.
Yeah.
Like, they're just, every single person has something they're here to do. And yeah, it's so amazing. I do think these things are becoming really popular for a few reasons, but one is just people know that. Like, everybody knows that. They're like, I want something more, but I'm not sure what it is, or I feel stuck, or I feel lost. And I'm like, part of you does know, though.
Yeah.
Part of you knows exactly why. And you just, a lot of times when I do plant medicine, it feels like a remembering.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, it doesn't feel like new information coming in. It feels like remembering all this stuff again.
Yes. Yeah. That's never like that second ayahuasca ceremony I had where I felt like everything. Like I realized, oh shit, there is a higher power and there are these beings like always helping us. We're never alone. And that was just a total remembering. It didn't feel like I was getting all this completely new information and I had no way to integrate it. It was like I just quickly clicked.
Yeah.
And I could just move on. And again, like I said, the doubt still obviously came in, but it was like, no, it's always been there. I just forgot. Totally different feeling of trying to get all this new information. And I hear guests say this all the time, like, I'm so scared I'm not going to remember this. It's like, you're going to remember what you need to because you haven't really forgotten anything. It's all in there still. Yeah. This is just a process of, like we said, taking off the shit, just remembering. Yeah. Do you think you'll try, like, mushrooms or anything after this?
Yeah, I wanted to try it last year, but just didn't get the opportunity to do so. But I think I was always scared because there was never like in the chance for this perfect setting which I wanted to have with mushrooms. for example. But I think that was one of the deciding factors for me doing ayahuasca, because it is this setting of like you've been taken care of and there's literally nothing to worry about except for your own stuff coming up, but it's your own stuff, right?
Yes.
And it's done in a traditional way, and it's seen as a medicine. It's used as a medicine, and so now I feel much more comfortable like doing mushrooms on myself, doing a ceremony for myself, and I know that I could handle it, and
it kind of reminds me of being afraid of the dark, because it's like, what are you afraid of? Or what was I used to be afraid of, like you said, it's the unknown, it's not being in control, but it's also, or it was for me, my own mind, my own stuff that was coming up that it was like, when I look back, I didn't want to be alone with my own mind. Like, that was the scariest concept. I was like, anything but that. And then when you do these ayahuasca ceremonies or darkness or anything, it's like, that's what you have to sit in and look at. There's no escape. So I think it's another, like when you just brought that up, I'm like, oh yeah, that's probably why I'm less afraid of the dark too. It's all these things. It's realizing I'm not in control, and that's okay. You don't have to be, but it's also realizing like, you're just afraid of being afraid. You're just afraid of your own mind. You're just afraid of your own stuff coming up. That's all it is. It's your own stuff. So when you start seeing it that way, you're like, I think I could handle whatever form it takes, whether it's mushrooms or a darkness retreat. Like you have the tools. So that makes sense. I mean, even still, I always tell people I get nervous before like any psychedelic. I've always had anxiety about it. And for me, like so many of my trips, whether it's ayahuasca or mushrooms, start out with like a 45-minute period of anxiety. Like at least I'm just like, just feeling the anxiety, letting it be there, and just like we always talk about, just feeling it and then letting it pass. But it's just like almost this hurdle that I always have to go through. And I don't even know if it's coming from just me being nervous, or if it's like that's the start of the plants being like, you have to go through this obstacle first before you get to the good stuff. It's like I have to prove myself worthy. Like, oh, well, what if we give you this fear? And I'm like, okay, that's fine. I'll just sit with it. And then they're like, okay, good job. You know, get a pat on the back. We can move on.
Test pass.
Exactly. But it's so crazy how it happens so often. And now I'm just kind of not used to it, but it's like, this is just part of it. You know, it's, and as hard as it gets, I just still remember like, I can handle this. I'm not going to be getting anything from plants or from life that I can't handle. So I must be able to handle this. So it's okay.
Yeah, right.
And then you always get through it, you know?
Yeah, and I think I like to be nervous before a ceremony. It just shows me that I still have enough respect for the medicine. There comes a point where I'm not nervous and not excited about a ceremony, then I shouldn't drink. Then it's time to do something different.
I like that. I feel the same way. Yeah. I feel the same way. I think there was 1 or 2 nights where I went in without any nerves, just excited, you know, just like, yeah, I'm ready. And it was just so tough. And I was like, okay, that was a humbling experience.
Yeah, I don't like this.
You're like, I am still humble, you know? It's like one thing I say every night before, when I'm like, you know, saying my intentions to ayahuasca or making my prayers, I'm always like, giving all my intentions, you know, I'm ready for whatever, thank you so much, but like, I'm humble, and I respect you. Just keep that in mind.
Right.
Because it's true, I've been humbled many times. Yeah, I had this Wachuma experience. Did I tell you this when I was like, kind of ready to like step into being a butterfly out of the cocoon? I felt like I had been in a cocoon for a while, just like in a metamorphosis process. And there's this one Wachuma thing where I realized like, oh, it's time to be the butterfly. And I like initially just freaked out about that, because I was like, it was very similar to what you said. Do I want to be healed? Like, what does that look like? And then I started getting worried that I was going to have this ego. Like, well, if I say that I'm healed enough to start being in service of others. Doesn't that just mean like I'm patting myself on my back and being like, oh, I'm better than everyone and I'm healed, you know? So I started getting worried about that in my trip. I'm like, but I can't be the butterfly because, you know, like, you know, that's just saying I'm healed. And so the message I got back pretty instantly from Wajuma San Pedro was like, don't worry, like, we will humble you if you need to be humbled. And I was like, okay, fair, you know, that's totally fair, which is just so true. It's been happenings where, you know, I don't think I usually, as far as I know, I haven't let my ego go totally out of control. I always have an eye on it. And I'm like, I don't think I'm special, like, not more special than anyone else. But I will keep continuing to shine my light bright to give others that permission slip. And if I need to be humbled, the plants will, and they fucking do. Just like I told you. Like, there have been nights where I'm ready, And then it's like, you're nothing. You're absolutely nothing. You're a speck of nothing. Like, oh, that's right. Thank you.
Yeah, it's always a good reminder.
It is.
Not to get ahead of ourselves.
It is. Yes. It is. And I think now I have faith. It's nice to have that faith, though, too, that life will humble us if we need it. We don't have to keep our egos so quiet and shy and dim our lights. It's like, no, shine your light. If you get too big, you'll be smacked down. It's okay. Don't be I think the people who are afraid of shining too bright are the ones who don't need to be afraid.
Yeah. Right.
I'm like, come on, shine. Like, I think I saw Tim Ferriss. Do you know Tim Ferriss? He's this podcaster that me and my dad love, but he posted something about how, or maybe it was Aubrey Marcus, whatever. Someone posted that, like, everyone's insecure. He's like, everybody is insecure. Like, most people are afraid to put themselves out there because they think they are not good enough yet. Or there's other people out there who are better than them, so why should they try? He's like, just fucking go for it. Just remember that this isn't just you feeling this way. Every single human has self-doubt. Every single human thinks they're not ready or they're unworthy. It's like, you have to just get past that. And just remember that everyone else is feeling that way. And the people who don't look like they are, they've probably either pushed past it or they're wearing a really nice mask, you know?
Yeah.
But either way, it's like, just you got to push past that. So yeah, that was a really nice message from Wachuma. And I laugh about it a lot now because I'm like, oh, I see what that means.
Yeah.
I get it now. You will humble me. And it's great.
Yeah, and I realized less ceremony that the only thing that's holding me back is my own doubt. That I can't do it. Or I'm not good enough. And it's just, when I drop the doubt, that's when I can shine, right? So, yeah, but sometimes, I just needed this reminder, less ceremony to feel like shit and see all the doubt I have in order to, like, drop it.
Yes.
And, yeah.
You got to bring that dark stuff to the surface before we can kind of not let it control us anymore.
Right.
That's really cool that you got that. It's so funny because I think a lot of times I hear people who want to be healers or whatever, or want to help others, but they basically can't get out of their own way. And they're waiting for someone to hand them a permission slip, like we keep talking about, but they're waiting for something like big, like a message from the plants or like a message from the corners to be like, you are gifted and talented.
Yeah.
You are doing the right work. You know, it's like, dude, you're not going to, sometimes you don't get a huge permission slip in bold italicized letters from the universe. You get signs.
Yeah.
And if you're on the right path, you'll know it. And then if you start doubting, it's like, again, that's just doubt. That's there. That's okay. But you don't need to have like constant affirmation, acknowledgement. You're doing great, you know? Right. It's like everyone's just waiting for everyone else to step up. So, yeah, I learned that one too, and I'm still learning that with it. Just like, dude, just do it. No one's going to come up to you with a shiny gold star and tell you that you were chosen specifically. Right. You are definitely meant to be here. Like,
not going to happen.
No. I had this amazing facilitator at that same Wachuma trip I was telling you about, where I told her, after I got all that information, I was like, damn, I think I want to be a facilitator. And even saying it scared me because I was like, I don't know if I'm ready. And she was like, just so you know, if you go into this line of work, don't expect acknowledgement, don't expect praise. Like, you're doing this for you. You're doing this for you to help others. and you're doing this because you feel like this is what you need to do. You're not doing this for praise. You're not doing this for acknowledgement. You're not going to get it.
Right.
And I always think about that because it helps me so much. Now I really just don't need it. I'm like, because I know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And Drew always says that, you know, I know what I'm doing here. I know why. It
Yeah.
doesn't matter if nobody else does.
Right.
Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for listening. Thanks so much for sitting with us and sharing
Yeah,
all of
sure.
your stories and all of your lessons. It's been such a pleasure.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys. Sending you love.